Hi. You never really expect betrayal to come dressed in something so ordinary. A silk tie, navy blue, subtle diagonal stripes. I remember holding it between my fingers, the way the fabric slipped smooth like a secret too well kept. I found it on a Thursday, early morning, when the house was quiet and the sunlight hadn't yet decided what kind of day it would be. It was draped over the chair in our bedroom. My chair, the one I used to pile clean laundry on and pretend I'd fold later. Except I hadn't worn a tie in months. And definitely not this one. I picked it up slowly. No anger. No panic. Just that awful stillness that settles over you when the truth starts leaking through the cracks. My first thought was innocent. Maybe it was mine and I forgot. Maybe I wore it to that conference last year. Maybe it was a gift. But deep down, I already knew. The tag was still tucked underneath the knot. Brooks Brothers. Not my brand. My throat tightened, but not from rage. It was something else, like grief knocking at the wrong door. She was in the shower. I could hear her humming. She always hummed when she thought I wasn't listening. That old Adele song again, the one she said reminded her of college. I stood there for maybe a full minute, just listening. Tie in one hand, wedding band on the other. I didn't confront her. I didn't barge into the bathroom or throw accusations like daggers. That wasn't me. Not anymore. Instead, I folded it. Neatly. Carefully. I laid it beside the divorce papers I'd drawn up 3 weeks earlier. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. Back then, she'd told me he was just a coworker. His name came up casually. Matt from accounting, or Matt's group was laid on the report. Always said with that offhand tone people use when they're trying too hard to sound unbothered. I remember the first time I met him. Holiday party. Cheap wine, too many forced smiles. He was tall, too tan for December. Confident in that way guys get when they know they're attractive and don't have to try too hard. He shook my hand like I was temporary. I remember that. He wore a navy blue tie. It took me months to admit what I already suspected. But I didn't snoop. I didn't go through her phone, didn't trail her car. That's not how I wanted to live. If the truth was coming, it would arrive eventually. And it did, disguised as a tie carelessly left in a space that used to feel sacred. Funny how betrayal doesn't always kick down the door. Sometimes it tiptoes in while you're sleeping. The week before, she'd been distant. Not cold, just removed. Laughing a little too hard at texts she wouldn't let me see. Tired eyes, but energized in other ways. She told me work was draining, that they were planning a retreat to align the leadership teams. I said I understood. I always did. We had good days, too. That's what made it harder. Tuesday night, we ate Chinese on the couch. She stole the last dumpling and smirked at me like we were still 27 and broke and clueless, trying to figure out how to share a tiny apartment and still dream big. She kissed my shoulder before bed. And then Thursday came. The tie, the humming, the understanding I'd been avoiding finally moved in and took a seat. I left the tie there all day. Didn't mention it. Didn't even bring it up when she came out of the shower wrapped in that towel she never let me wash because it smells like my lotion. She kissed my cheek and said, "You okay?" I smiled. "Yeah, just thinking." We ate dinner. Watched a rerun. She fell asleep on the couch like nothing had changed. Like the fibers of that tie hadn't pulled the truth out from under everything we'd built. That night, I stayed up late reading over the divorce papers. I drafted them quietly a few weeks back after the second time she lied about being at work late. I didn't file them. I just needed to know I had them. A kind of emotional safety net. People always ask why I didn't fight, why I didn't scream or break something or demand answers. But sometimes, when you love someone deeply, the most painful thing isn't the betrayal. It's realizing you're not going to get the closure you think you deserve. That no conversation, no confession, will ever make it right. So I didn't ask her about the tie. I just folded it, set it down next to the papers. And when she asked me Friday morning where I was going so early, I smiled and said, "Just clearing my head." I drove to the courthouse, not because I was angry, but because I knew, and because knowing was enough. The courthouse smelled like paper and hallway coffee. I sat on the bench outside the clerk's office, divorce papers tucked in a manila folder on my lap. The tie wasn't with me. It stayed on our dresser, right where I left it, like a silent witness to the end of something we never thought would. I stared at the floor for a while. The grout between the tiles needed scrubbing. I noticed that. It's strange what your mind chooses to focus on when your heart is trying to hold itself together. The clerk called my name, and I filed the paperwork. No drama. No trembling voice. Just signatures and stamps, and then I was done. At least, legally. Emotionally, that was a mess I hadn't even started to unpack. I didn't move out immediately. That's the part most people find hard to believe. They imagine me storming out, suitcase in hand, slamming the door behind me while she begs me to stay. That's not what happened. I went home. We had dinner again. She asked how my day went. I said it was quiet. She didn't notice anything different. That was the worst part. The fact that the man she married, the one she used to call her best friend, could come home after filing for divorce, and she didn't even see the storm behind his eyes. It was like I was already invisible to her. That weekend, she left for the work retreat. Team building in Tahoe, she said, with a tone so casual it felt rehearsed. She kissed me on the cheek, wheeled her bag to the door, and didn't even look back. I watched the taillights disappear down our street. Then I went upstairs, opened the drawer beside her side of the bed, and started packing. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't trying to punish myself by digging through evidence. I just wanted to gather what was mine and leave the rest to memory. But memory has a way of playing games when you're in pain. Her jewelry box was open. Not the big one. The small wooden one she kept for the meaningful stuff. There was the bracelet I gave her on our first anniversary. The watch her dad bought her after her graduation. And underneath all that, tucked beneath the silk lining, was a note. Folded once. Smudged handwriting. Thanks for last night. You're unbelievable. I'll miss you in Tahoe, but maybe we can get creative. M. No name. Just M. But I didn't need one. I already had the tie. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The same bed we shared. The same sheets we picked out together after arguing in the aisle of Bed Bath and Beyond about thread count. It felt absurd. How a life could fracture in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just placed the note on top of the tie. A small, stupid pile of proof. Not because I needed her to see it, but because I wanted her to know I knew, and that I still wasn't going to play the part of the bitter husband. I left 2 days later. I didn't leave a letter. I didn't send a text. I took the essentials, my clothes, my tools, the box of photos from before we lost each other, and I walked out the door like a man stepping off a stage he never asked to be on. She called when she got back. For missed calls. Then one voicemail. Hey babe, it looks like you took a bunch of stuff. Everything okay? Call me, please. She sounded confused. Not worried. Not guilty. Just inconvenienced. I didn't call back. She left more voicemails over the week, each one more frantic than the last. The 8th one finally cracked. That's the one where she broke down crying. Said she was scared. That we needed to talk. That she made mistakes, but they weren't what I thought. That he didn't mean anything. But he did. He meant enough to forget me. That's what I kept coming back to. Not the betrayal itself, but how casual it must have been. How easy it was for her to place him in our space, on our furniture, around our memories, like I was some placeholder waiting to be erased. I stayed with my brother for a while. Slept on his pull-out couch with springs that dug into my back. He didn't ask many questions. Just handed me a beer and watched the game while I sat there like a man trying not to fall apart. One night, he finally asked, "You gonna tell her it's over?" I said, "I already did." "How?" I shrugged. I left the tie. He looked at me like I was speaking another language. "You think she gets that?" "I think she will." And she did. Because 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just one line inside. I saw it. No apology. No explanation. No begging. Just confirmation. That she saw the tie. That she understood. I stared at the letter for a long time. I saw it. That was all she wrote. No name. No date. Not even a love, always, or a please call. Just that. 3 words that weighed more than 1,000 could. I didn't feel angry when I read it. I didn't feel anything, really. It was like hearing the final note of a song you used to love. Familiar, echoing, but hollow now. I set the letter down next to the tie and the note from him. The trinity of silence that told the whole story. I never responded. I didn't need to. Some people think closure comes from confrontation. That you have to hear them say it. That they lied. That they chose someone else. That they knew what they were doing when they broke you. But I learned something in those quiet days after leaving. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you decide you're done waiting for. I stayed with my brother for another month. Helped him paint his garage. Cooked more than I had in years. I started going on long walks again. The kind where you don't bring your phone and don't care where you end up. It felt like waking up after a long sleep. Like remembering I used to have a life that didn't orbit around her moods, her schedule, her secrets. One morning, I walked past a small tailor shop downtown. Something about the window caught my eye. Ties, neatly folded, arranged by color and pattern. There was one that looked almost identical to his. Same navy blue, same stripes. I went inside, asked if I could hold it. The shopkeeper smiled and said, "Good eye? Silk. Italian. Not many men appreciate a tie like this anymore." I ran my thumb across the fabric. Smooth, quiet, familiar, but I didn't buy it. That tie wasn't mine. Not then, not now. I left it folded, just like the first one. Eventually, the divorce went through. She didn't fight it. Her lawyer sent over a list of minor revisions, mostly about who got what kitchenware. She wanted the Dutch oven. I let her have it. It felt poetic in some strange way. She could keep the heavy, beautiful thing neither of us ever used. We didn't see each other again after that. No dramatic confrontation. No last-minute coffee shop meetup where someone cries and asks, "How did we get here?" It just ended. Some nights, I'd wonder if she ever told him, the coworker. If she admitted I knew. If she warned him about the quiet way I left. The way I refused to burn it all down. I wondered if he ever felt guilty. If he ever looked at her and saw me, not in jealousy, but in consequence. But I never let those thoughts stay long. They weren't worth renting space in the peace I was starting to rebuild. Instead, I focused on the parts of myself I'd let go of. I started playing guitar again. Badly, but with heart. I signed up for a cooking class, just to do something that didn't revolve around spreadsheets or emotions. I learned to sleep diagonally across a bed again, to enjoy silence without suspicion. And I started journaling. Nothing fancy, just a spiral notebook I kept by the bed. One night, I wrote this. You don't always get a reason. Sometimes, the tie just shows up. And that's all the answer you'll ever get. But it's enough. Because knowing is quieter than closure. And quieter is sometimes stronger. I closed the notebook and slept soundly. Last I heard, she moved to another city. Portland or maybe Seattle. Somewhere it rains a lot. Somewhere it's easier to pretend the past was just a bad dream. I hope she found whatever it was she was chasing. I mean that sincerely. We weren't monsters to each other, not really. Just people who stopped being honest long before we stopped being in love. And me? I'm okay. Better than okay, most days. I rent a small place now. Big windows, creaky floors. There's a diner down the street where they know my name and how I take my coffee. And every once in a while, I walk past a store with ties in the window. I look at them, nod, and keep walking. I don't need to fold another one. Once was enough. Bye-bye.